Empire Earnings. Build your financial empire.
Every day, millions of people are opening platforms like ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini and asking them what to do with their money. This chart shows data from a recent Intuit Credit Karma poll. Among Americans who use generative AI, 66% report using it for financial advice. For millennials and Gen Z, that number jumps to 82%. 85% of those asking for guidance actually acted on the recommendations the machine gave them. Taking investment instructions from an algorithm has moved past the experimental phase. It is a mainstream behavior driving real wealth allocation right now. There is a logical reason for this trust. The platforms are genuinely capable. Andrew Lo is a finance professor and the director of the Laboratory for Financial Engineering at MIT. According to Professor Lo, if you evaluate strictly on technical capability, AI currently possesses the financial expertise required to successfully replace a human advisor. Raw intelligence alone obscures a structural defect in how these systems operate. The traditional advisory relationship relies on a legal mechanism called a fiduciary duty. This is the same principle that governs the relationship you have with a doctor or a lawyer. By definition, a fiduciary duty dictates that the professional must put their client's best financial interest strictly ahead of their own. A strict legal framework enforces this obligation through a rigorous system of penalties. The financial system works precisely because the humans inside it have personal stakes. If they betray a client, they have something very real to lose. This diagram outlines the escalating penalties a human advisor faces for violating their fiduciary responsibility. A single breach can trigger regulatory fines, severe civil liabilities, and criminal charges. But an artificial intelligence platform is entirely immune to this legal framework. You cannot physically imprison an algorithm. You cannot strip a chatbot of its financial licensing because it never held one to begin with. As Professor Lo points out, the entire concept of prioritizing a client has no teeth if the entity giving the advice cannot be held legally liable. We have successfully replicated the intelligence of a financial expert while completely stripping away the mechanisms that force them to act in our best interest. The rapid adoption of this technology has forced the legal community to play catch-up. Sebastian Benthal, a senior research fellow at NYU's Information Law Institute, has been examining the regulatory void surrounding these platforms. He highlights a critical unresolved issue. If you rely on a machine's recommendation and suffer a catastrophic financial loss, who exactly is held responsible? Right now, the answer is nobody. Neither the algorithm spitting out the advice nor the multi-billion-dollar tech corporation that programmed it owes you a fiduciary duty. The legal system is currently failing to keep pace with the technology, creating an expansive gray area where consumers only think they are protected. Millions of Americans are currently executing trades and managing portfolios based on chatbot outputs. Anyone interacting with a language model for their personal financial planning is operating entirely without a legal safety net. Until regulators force tech companies to attach corporate fiduciary liability to their products, you are absorbing 100% of the risk for every mistake the machine makes. Without accountability, even the smartest algorithm functions only as a tool, leaving you to answer for the damage it causes. Everyday people are increasingly handing their most sensitive numbers over to artificial intelligence, treating it like a free, instantly accessible financial advisor. It is an incredibly tempting shortcut. You type in your income, your expenses, and your debt, asking a chatbot to organize your household budget and calculate your specific savings rate. But while human financial planners have their own flaws, handing your life savings over to an algorithm introduces a much sharper risk to your wealth. This raises a strange contradiction. If these models are sophisticated enough to write complex software or pass the bar exam, why are they structurally unsafe for your personal financial planning? The danger stems from our own biological instinct to trust an answer simply because it's presented with absolute, unwavering confidence, regardless of whether the machine actually performed the math. To safely evaluate AI tools, we have to look at this confidence versus competence matrix. We map linguistic confidence on the vertical axis against mathematical competence on the horizontal axis. Up here in the top right, we find conceptual retrieval. This is where the AI is both highly confident and highly competent, making it a genuinely valuable resource for learning. If you ask for an overview of Medicare enrollment rules or want to understand the basic mechanics of a Roth IRA, the output will generally provide a reliable, digestible answer. It thrives here because it's acting as a dynamic encyclopedia, synthesizing established, overarching rules into a conversational format. But watch what happens when we move from general rules to your specific numbers. We drop into this upper left quadrant, maximum linguistic confidence with near zero mathematical competence. Despite their incredible grasp of language, these models are shockingly weak at executing basic arithmetic. They can perfectly define the tax code for you, but they lack the structural ability to accurately calculate what you actually owe. To understand why a highly advanced computer fails at middle school math, we have to look at the underlying architecture of large language models. These systems are built with a single primary directive: predict the next most likely sequence of words, so that the output sounds natural to the human ear. When you feed a tax equation into a large language model, it doesn't see values to be computed. It scans the equation and categorizes the inputs as grammatical syntax, treating digits exactly like nouns and verbs. A standard calculator uses rigid, rules-based logic to reach a definitive sum. The language model, on the other hand, is playing a highly sophisticated game of word association. And here is where the mechanical failure occurs. When the model inevitably falters on the math, it does not possess the functional capacity to output an honest error message. Instead, the system automatically compensates. It generates the next most probable sequence of words, defaulting to an answer that sounds deeply authoritative, even when it is completely wrong. You receive a mathematically fabricated tax calculation, delivered with absolute certainty. Because an LLM's design prioritizes sounding correct over actually being correct, asking it to manage your personal finances becomes an active liability. The first step to using these tools safely is strictly separating linguistic eloquence from mathematical accuracy. A machine that speaks beautifully is not necessarily a machine that can add. Financial experts recommend a strict protocol. Treat any specific calculation generated by an AI as a rough draft. Double and triple checking those figures is an absolute necessity. Use artificial intelligence to thoroughly understand the rules of your personal finances, but never rely on it to calculate them. We live in an era where it is incredibly tempting to outsource your wealth management to large language models. They offer instant, confident answers, and they do it for free. But there is a glaring structural flaw in taking financial cues from a machine. An algorithm doesn't have a retirement account. If its recommendation wipes out your portfolio, the machine itself suffers absolutely no real-world consequences. Take xAI's platform Grok, for instance. A legal official at Elon Musk's AI company explicitly warned users on social media that their tool is, quote, not tax advice, so always confirm yourself too. When you sit across from a human financial advisor, you likely assume the opposite is true. We tend to believe that a professional sitting in a physical office is legally bound to protect our wealth, and that they will face severe penalties if they fail us. Determining who is legally responsible when your money disappears matters more than the debate between human and artificial intelligence. This brings us to a legal term you need to know: fiduciary. In this diagram, you see a direct line between an advisor and a client. Being a fiduciary is a strict legal duty. It obligates the advisor to put your financial best interests entirely above their own profit, creating a solid barrier against outside incentives. Here is the uncomfortable reality of the traditional financial system. A massive portion of human advisors do not actually carry that legal title. The advisory landscape is built like a legal minefield. It operates in a way that leaves the consumer completely confused about the motives of the person sitting across from them. Your legal protections change entirely depending on the specific intermediary you speak to. A registered investment advisor has different legal duties than an insurance agent, and an insurance agent has different duties than a stockbroker. The danger here is highly practical. If an intermediary is not a fiduciary, they are legally allowed to steer you toward financial products that pay them a hefty commission, rather than providing the mathematically best option for your portfolio. Possessing a professional title, holding a state license, or simply having a human pulse does not automatically provide a legal safety net for your savings. Let's look at how this plays out in a high-stakes scenario. This animation shows a critical move, rolling hundreds of thousands of dollars from a 401k into an IRA. Because of the massive sums, the Biden administration attempted to enforce a strict fiduciary duty on this transaction. The United States Department of Labor was the specific agency tasked with issuing and enforcing this protective rule. However, that rule recently died in court. The Trump administration chose to stop defending the regulation, effectively killing it. With the rule gone, intermediaries are legally free to push rollover recommendations laden with hidden conflicts of interest. Silicon Valley algorithms are operating in a similar gray area. Legal scholars at New York University point out that if an AI, built by a US-based tech company, suggests you put your retirement entirely into US stocks, that could easily be viewed as an automated form of self-dealing. Both Wall Street intermediaries and Silicon Valley algorithms are currently operating without the absolute legal obligations of a fiduciary. The market for financial advice operates strictly under a buyer beware model, whether you are talking to a flesh and blood broker or prompting a neural network. Finance professor Andrew Lo offers a useful framework for large language models. He suggests treating them strictly as tools to generate different options and explain how those options might work. You should never treat their output as a command to act. You have to apply that exact same skeptical framework to any human financial advisor who lacks a documented fiduciary duty. Verifying the accuracy of the advice, evaluating their hidden motives, and absorbing the inevitable risk falls entirely on your shoulders. Because you cannot outsource legal accountability to a chatbot, and you often cannot outsource it to a broker, you must accept that you are your own final fiduciary. Today, millions of people are looking for ways to hand over their complex, high-stakes wealth decisions to algorithms. Right now, AI tools are scanning market trends and generating detailed financial strategies in fractions of a second, processing data at a scale that human analysts cannot match. But there is a legal vacuum at the center of this transition. If a consumer relies on a product for their livelihood, who is actually responsible when the software makes a mistake? The traditional system is built on fiduciary duty, a strict legal obligation requiring financial professionals to act solely in a client's best interest. The entire system relies on this stability. But AI corporations lack this duty. When machines replace advisors, the legal connection disappears, leaving users unprotected. Consumers are increasingly risking their wealth on sophisticated systems that are not legally required to prioritize the user's financial health. Consider a standard modern workflow. A human financial advisor uses a cutting-edge AI platform to generate a strategy for a client. The advisor inputs the client's financial data, relying on the AI's processing power to find the most efficient path toward the client's goals. The machine processes the request and delivers a complex, highly confident investment recommendation. However, in this scenario, the machine's logic is flawed. The portfolio growth plummets because the AI recommendation was actively harmful and failed to serve the client's best interest. The machine made the error in a millisecond, but the resulting financial loss for the client is permanent. With the damage done, the legal system has to determine how to assign blame in a workflow where a human followed a machine's lead. The first target for a lawsuit would typically be the massive tech corporation that built and sold the AI platform, but these corporations are currently shielded. Because they operate outside fiduciary responsibility, they are not legally liable for the financial fallout of their software's advice. When the corporation is untouchable, the legal focus shifts directly back to the human financial advisor. By presenting the AI's output to the client, the human advisor has personally violated their own fiduciary duty. They are responsible for the advice they give, regardless of where it originated. The human professional is left to absorb the total financial and legal liability for the machine's failure. The current system treats AI as an unaccountable tool, making human professionals the ultimate legal scapegoats for errors they didn't personally calculate. This accountability gap has placed the evolution of automated wealth management at a standstill. Without a safety net, individuals cannot safely delegate total control of their assets to an AI. Resolving this bottleneck requires a change in government policy regarding how we regulate artificial intelligence. Lawmakers everywhere are now being urged to create regulations that explicitly provide fiduciary protections for AI-driven financial advice. While adoption is currently paused, the passage of these laws would likely trigger a rapid acceleration in how we use these tools. We are not yet at the point where we can fully delegate our financial decisions to machines. That transition depends on the legal system catching up to the technology and forcing artificial intelligence to take responsibility for its own math.